Good morning, everybody. When the French Revolution began in 1789, one of the big questions was how would the king, Louis XVI, react? And in general, Louis was not a fan of the revolution, and on this date, June 21, in 1791, he and his family tried to escape Paris. But they were caught and returned to Paris, and eventually he and his wife, Marie Antoinette, were executed. And many people think one of the reasons is because they tried to flee the revolution. Here we have Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette. You can tell from the slide they were married as teenagers. She was not French, she was Austrian from the House of Habsburg. And when he became king a few years later, at age 19, it was pretty clear that he was overwhelmed by it. He was not really prepared to be king, and he had kind of a retiring personality. It was Louis XVI who got the French involved in our revolution, and at this painting of the British surrender at Yorktown, there are French soldiers along with the American soldiers and George Washington. In May of 1789, Louis XVI called the Estates General to meet at Versailles outside of Paris, kind of like a parliament. France was in lots of trouble, particularly economic, and the goal of this calling of the Estates General was try to come to some solution. But ferment was in the air. This is a drawing of the so-called tennis court oath, where members of the Estates General vowed they would not leave the tennis court until France had a new constitution. So this is some erosion of the power of the king. When the Bastille fell, July 14 in 1789, part of the backstory was a rumor that the king was about to send soldiers to Paris. So what is the role of the king in the French Revolution? This is an image of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, kind of like our Declaration of Independence, but it clearly moves power away from the king toward the people. In the fall of 1789, Parisian women marched out to Versailles about 12 miles. They were angry about the price of bread and other things. They basically stormed the palace at Versailles, and eventually the king and queen were forced back to Paris under house arrest, basically, and then later when the civil government took over the church, and that's what this cartoon is about, Louis was really upset by that because he was a very devout Catholic. And eventually he and Marie and others thought they would try to flee Paris. And here's the route they took, more or less. You can see Belgium to the north. The plan was that the royal family and their servants would make it to Belgium. It was known as the Spanish Netherlands, and it was controlled by the Habsburg family, which was Marie's family. But all kinds of things went wrong. Here's a picture of them getting arrested in this little town of Varennes. But they didn't really plan it very well. They dawdled a bit. Louis didn't disguise himself, so he was recognized. And after they were arrested, they were brought back to Paris under guard. That's what this picture is. So the role of Louis XVI changes after this escape attempt. Before, he was kind of negative about the revolution, but now he's seen as an enemy of the revolution. And eventually, in January of 1793, he goes to the guillotine and gets executed as an enemy of the revolution, and that's what this drawing is. And later that same year, Marie Antoinette went to the guillotine. Here's a drawing of that. There are a lot of reasons why she went to the guillotine. One was she wasn't French. Another was the escape to Varennes, and other things too. Years ago, Dorothy and I were in that part of France, and we went to Varennes. And here's the sign into the town, and you can see on it where it says the Tower of Louis XVI. That tower's in the background, and that's where he got arrested, in that area. So we were imagining the king and the group going up this road, waiting for the next relay to happen, but then they got arrested. And here's the place where it happened. You can see Dorothy there in front of the church, and behind her is a plaque that described the events a little bit and why that's so historic. So in this circle, Varennes is in the left, but in the right is Verdun, the great World War I battle site. a historic part of France.